you, there weren't any,
Oh, okay.
hopefully.
I do too. It's just something old
Keep
fashioned.
talking, we have a few
Check
minutes.
me off a list. Do you have your speech prepared? You ready? All right.
Bill Hart was.
Right. I tell you, all it takes is do something for a cop and a fireman, and you get everybody out of here.
Where is Bill Goodman? Let's see. Is there any we want to move up? Which ones do we want to move up?
I don't know that you can. You got
What's she for? Oh, here, it says place that may have. I can put,
Bill.
yeah, I could put 14, 20. Anything else?
You've got these guys are all here. 17, and they also an 18.
Baby.
And I don't know, is Steve Krause here?
For Benjamin, I don't see him.
Usually get infants.
So let me take out 14, 17, 18. Yeah, this is thick packet tonight. You're not kidding.
Yeah, I know. We have a lot of dignity.
5 years.
Yes.
Okay.
Communication.
We have 14.
Oh, we've got the guy here for
Correct. Yeah, I think Drew said he was ill.
Oh,
that
which,
guy.
yeah, which is he?
You
oh,
do a
just
hard
down the
reset?
Well,
Okay, well, he can.
Yeah.
That's gonna be fairly, no, it can be fairly fast.
you want me to get you one?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that would be great.
So we're going to bring him up too.
Oh, I'm good.
And you know what? I don't have a 14
So
on
if
here.
I-
I know it's Bill Goodman, but usually we have a sheet that goes with that. Where is it?
Oh.
Oh, I'm talking about for Goodman,
Take all of them.
not for consent.
I
There were a
did.
lot. I took half.
Usually we have a sheet. I go from
Very much.
14 to
I think
50.
we're fine. No, I mean, yeah, pass them, thanks. 'cause-
These are hard
Wow,
copies.
what
that
are?
you may need.
My gosh,
Pass them
thank you.
down.
I just meant there are plenty left.
Premier plenty.
Thank you. Okay, good. Thank you so much. Okay, well, how come we don't have
Thank
a
you very
14?
much.
Well, this is your 14.
Technically, it's always had a sheet.
Ah, okay.
Wow.
I think it's Carol.
That was responsive.
Russ, you know what? You can have this.
Trustee assistant help.
Presentation? Prefer to have the.
I need somebody to help me with my own finances.
So,
Everybody ready?
so
Right,
we're
ready?
going- Do you want 14?
I got 17, 18, and what was it? Was there any more?
You know what, if anything's gonna fall over,
Because that'll be quick.
All right, okay. Lose a day?
23rd.
Oh, life is going fast. Okay, July
Time marches
23rd,
on.
2018. Roll call, please.
Trustee Ankman,
Here?
Trustee Dewar,
Aye. Here.
So agreeable.
Trustee Grenier,
Here.
Trustee Lemieux,
Here.
Trustee Meyer.
Here.
Would everyone please stand for the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. We have the oath of office here. Okay, it is my pleasure to start us out this evening to give the oath of office to our newest police officer, Alexander Vanderlinden. And if Officer Vanderlinden would please come up here to the podium. Okay, hi, Chief. Would you raise your hand? Thank you. And repeat after me. I, Alexander Vanderlinden,
Alexander Vanderlinden,
having been appointed to the office of police officer
having been appointed to the office of police officer
in the village of Lake Bluff,
in the village of Lake Bluff,
in the county of Lake,
in the county of Lake,
aforesaid,
aforesaid,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of the,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of police officer
and I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of police officer
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
Congratulations. Always one of the better things that we do.
Welcome aboard.
And I'm sure you're aware you are joining an extremely fine department, of which we are very well proud. Okay, we have the consideration of the minutes of the July 9th, 2018 Village Board meeting. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
So moved by Mr. Grenier. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Dewart. Any corrections to this?
I have one.
Okay, please.
Received earlier today in minutes. This is a comment made that, let me get to the right page. There's a section where to replace the last two sentences in the paragraph where it reads, Member Lemieux stated the village has considered these type of permitted uses on several occasions. This is in reference to the petition having to do with the special use permit for the animal hospital. The decision was made to regulate permitted non-sales tax generating business as a special use. He also commented that not including veterinary use as a permitted use was an oversight since human medical use is permitted as a special use. So just rewording of that section.
Okay, anything else? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. At this point in time, we allow 15 minutes for anyone who might want to address the board on something that is not on tonight's agenda. Do we have anyone this evening? Mr. Barkhausen, please come up.
Thank you, President O'Hara and members of the board. I'm David Barkhausen, 714 East Prospect Avenue here in Lake Bluff, and coming to you tonight in my capacity as chair of our Lake Bluff Lake Forest Rotary Club's Clean Communities Coalition. And our purpose is to encourage residents, along with our members, to look out for litter on our public streets and parkways and to encourage people to go out of their way to pick it up. This was a committee and a group of our Rotary Club that started about half a dozen years ago. I don't know if any of you may recall, we did a mass mailing at that time to encourage residents to adopt this practice. And we adopted two different major sections of local roads in Lake Forest and Lake Bluff, here in 176 extending from the Village Hall out to west of Waukegan Road, and in Lake Bluff and Lake Forest on Waukegan Road from down just north of 60 all the way up to 176. I am wearing tonight a vest that you may see me running around town in on a regular most every day that I'm around. And I'm grateful to be able to do this at an advanced age and wear this not only as a safety measure, but also to advertise our club's activity and to encourage residents to adopt this practice. We're taking our campaign now to a new and higher level. We've invested in literally thousands of bags, litter bags, that have our Rotary Club's name on them, and the slogan to encourage residents to don't let litter lie. Please pick it up. And we hope that this will catch on. In addition to that, we have stickers that are less visible than our bags, but that we've been given permission, for which we're grateful, from municipal and park district authorities to be putting these stickers on waste receptacles around town. So look for these, if you will. I don't know if any of you have seen the publicity that was just brought to my attention on this subject within the last couple of months, that has caught on internationally, that a campaign that started in Sweden that's known as a strange word, plogging, which is a combination of jogging and a Swedish word for picking up called plocka uppa. Anyway, they call it plogging, and it's amazing. This is garnered publicity on every major television network, many of the daily newspapers, and this came out of Sweden and only started in 2016. And I've said, to myself, well, something's wrong with my PR agent, because I've been doing this around town for maybe a dozen years, and we're still trying to encourage many others of our residents to adopt this practice. So anyway, you're nice to give me and our club the time this evening, and what I'd like to do, if I may, is to leave each of you with one of our bags, and so that you may begin. I'm sure some of you have started already, but to adopt the practice, I analogize to in the crime prevention world, the former police chief in New York, I think this was under Mayor Giuliani, adopted the theory of broken windows, theory of policing, that if you take care of the broken windows, the big stuff will more easily take care of itself. So where picking up litter is concerned, I'd encourage residents to adopt a cigarette butt or gum wrapper theory of litter control. Keep your eye out on that stuff, and the big stuff will take care of itself. So litter bags for all of you. If you allow me one more brief moment. You, Trustee
Thank you,
Meyer.
David.
David. Thank you. Sign here. And Drew had nicely asked for a supply of bags to keep with the village, and I'll leave him and you all of that.
What he puts trustee emails in.
Busted.
Thanks, David.
Thank you, David.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very much. Is there anyone else who would like to speak this evening on something that is not on tonight's agenda? Okay, hearing none, the village board sets the order of the meeting. I'm going to suggest to the board that we do number 14. We also do the consent agenda, then number 20, number 17, and number 18.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Meyer.
Second.
And second by
Lemieux.
Mr. Lemieux. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Oh. What is that? Somebody needs a
Passing
muffler.
vehicle.
You don't hear them, I was just surprised. Okay, well this, again, like swearing in a new officer, this is always an honor. And over the last year or two, we've had several, all ex-students. are honored, that we honor for their service to this community. And you know, this truly, when we do this, we are honoring you, we're honoring your families, and we honor ourselves, because we are a volunteer community. And this is the bulwark of who we are as a community. And that so many people who have grown up here, lived here, have come back, stayed on, and given themselves to this community, along with newer people who come in to help rejuvenate it. On behalf of this village board, ourselves and the citizens, thank you. I mean, all of you, because we are nothing without you folks. We really, you are the bulwark of this community. So with that, I would like to do a resolution honoring the public service of Assistant Fire Chief, and I started to say Billy Goodman, but Bill Goodman. Whereas Bill Goodman has loyally and faithfully served the Lake Bluff Fire Department, excuse me, and the citizens of Lake Bluff for 25 years. And whereas, beginning July of 1993, Bill Goodman assumed the duties of Assistant Fire Chief for the Lake Bluff Fire Department, and I missed the one above me, whereas beginning in July of 1993, Bill Goodman had served in a variety of capacities, including firefighter, lieutenant, captain, and in September of 2008, you assumed the duties of Assistant Fire Chief for the Lake Bluff Fire Department. And whereas through the commitment of Bill Goodman, the Lake Bluff Fire Department provides services and programs to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the citizens of the village of Lake Bluff. Whereas Bill Goodman is a public safety professional who has demonstrated outstanding commitment to the village of Lake Bluff and to its residents for 25 years, including participation in several hundred training hours, throughout which he has maintained a positive attitude and sense of purpose befitting a committed professional. Now therefore, be it proclaimed by the President and Board of Trustees of the Village of Lake Bluff, County of Lake, and State of Illinois, that the Village of Lake Bluff hereby recognizes Bill Goodman for his numerous significant and outstanding contributions to the Lake Bluff Fire Department since 1993.
I'll be brief.
You get to take this with you
Okay,
too.
thank you very much. So I'm going to kind of duplicate a few of the things Kathy said here, but first, the family, it's a big part of being a firefighter here, a volunteer in town. They have to put up with a lot of crazy nights, pagers going off in the wee hours, and messed up meals periodically, and they are the unsung heroes, I think, here. But going to the volunteer thing, my teacher, Kathy O'Hara, my history teacher back in about 1970, she instilled it, and this town does have it, and it's because of people like Kathy that this town is what it is today. The bike race the other day, the volunteers out there, it was incredible, and we heard from all the racing people what a wonderful, wonderful town this is, and it's because of the people and the volunteer efforts. I mean, they had 60 volunteers, I believe, with the guys doing the corners and so forth. It's a pretty special place to be, and I'm honored and quite privileged to be able to serve with all the fine guys on the fire department and policemen, and I thank you very much.
Totally understand if people would like to make a judicious exit. Thank you all again for coming. We really appreciate it. Wow, 20. 11, 12, and 13.
Got it?
Okay, our next, we're going to move down and take the consent agenda, which we have agreed to do so. Consent agenda includes the acceptance of the correspondence, second reading of an ordinance amending the Lake Bluff zoning regulations to establish veterinary services for animal specialties as a special use in the L1 Light Industry District, and a second reading of an ordinance granting a special use permit to Forest Bluff Animal Hospital and J.F. McCarthy to operate a veterinary service for animal specialties and dog daycare, boarding, grooming, and training business in the village's L1 Light Industry zoning district. Do I have a motion, please?
So moved.
So moved by Mr. Grenier, and a second.
Second.
Second by Mrs. Ankerman. Okay, anybody have any questions about any of those? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Oh, we did that. Okay, that's why I like it. Okay, brought to my attention that in the exuberance of honoring Bill Goodman, I did not get a first and a second on the motion to accept and to acknowledge his contributions. Thank you, Mr.
Second.
Dewick. And second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
We also need a roll call on the consent, because those are second reading approvals.
Second room's approving, and a roll call, please.
Trustee Inkhman.
Aye.
Trustee Dewar.
Aye.
Trustee Grenier.
Aye.
Trustee Lemieux.
Aye.
Trustee Meyer.
Aye.
All right, we're also going to go now to number 20, which is an ordinance granting a variation from the village's front yard setback restrictions for 673 Maple. Also, there is a request for a waiver of second reading and approval of the ordinance. Do I have a motion, please?
So moved.
So moved by Mr. Dewar, and a second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Lemieux. At its July 9th meeting, the Village Board of Trustees designated the residence located at 673 Maple Avenue as a historic landmark upon the recommendation of the Historic Preservation Commission, HPC. At that time, it was noted that an application for front yard setback relief for the same property would be considered by the PCZBA at its July 18th regular meeting. In their application for zoning relief, the petitioner asserts that a 20-foot, 6-inch variation from the village's front yard setback regulations is necessary to allow the reconstruction and expansion of a previous addition that is not compatible with the historic structure. The application also notes that the lot's irregular shape, the ravine that runs through the lot, and a distance of the principal structure from other structures as contributing to the unique hardship asserted to exist at 673 Maple Avenue. After conducting a public hearing at its July 18th regular meeting, the PCZBA evaluated the application in view of the standards for variation and unanimously recommended that the village board grant the requested relief. Additionally, at its June 13th regular meeting, the HPC proposed that the proposed work was not inconsistent with the historic preservation ordinance, and it discharged the property from the advisory review necessary for changes to historic structures, and recommended that the village board grant the requested relief. Due to the cancellation of the board's August 13th regular meeting, the petitioner has requested the board to waive second reading and approve the ordinance on July 23rd. The petitioners will be present to answer any questions if we have. Do I have a motion, please?
So moved.
So moved by Ms. Ankerman, and a second.
Already got
You have
I
a
already
first and
did that,
second. You
didn't I?
have-
I'm
yeah.
sorry, okay. All righty, do we have any questions for the petitioner? Do we have any questions for the administration? Well, I will just have to say, and then we do two things on this one. We're gonna do this first, and then we have second reading to waive to, correct?
If you want to, yes.
Or can we do it all, can we bundle it?
What, bundle first and second reading?
Yeah.
No, two different votes.
I knew I tried to sneak that. Okay. First of all, I would just recommend, I think 673 is a wonderful classic example of mid-century modern, and I'm so glad that it's been put on the register, and we thank you for that. It's a historic, and I'm sure it's gonna be beautiful when it's totally done. Okay, roll call vote. Actually, I think
Do
for the
voice
first
vote
one, I
first
could do
reading.
voice vote in the first one and roll call in the second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, do I have a motion to waive second reading?
So moved.
So moved by Mr. Grenier, and do I have a second?
Second.
And second by Mr. Dewart. Any comments, questions? Roll call.
Trustee Dewart.
Aye.
Trustee Grenier.
Aye.
Trustee Lemieux.
Aye.
Trustee Meyer.
Aye.
Trustee Ingemann.
Aye.
Okay. Thank you very much. Good luck. Okay, we are now doing number 17, which is a resolution approving a professional engineering service agreement with Baxter and Woodman, Inc., Phase 1 Design Agreement for Green Bay Road Reconstruction Project. Do I have a motion, please?
So moved.
So moved by Mrs. Ankerman, and a second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Lemieux. The village plans to pursue federal funding through the Surface Transportation Program, STP, for the reconstruction of the village-owned segment of Green Bay Road from the intersection of Green Bay Road and State Highway 176 to the southern village limit. The next round of STP funding is expected to be opened in January of 2020, and having Phase 1 and 2 completed prior to that time, excuse me, will make the project much more likely to receive funding. If the project is awarded STP funding, 80% of eligible construction project costs will be paid with federal dollars, with construction likely to occur in 2021 or 2022. The project scope includes a full reconstruction of the roadway, new curb and gutter, significant storm sewer and sidewalk work, and smaller amounts of sanitary sewer and water main work. Work on the bridge over the Union Pacific Railroad track is excluded from this project and is budgeted separately for completion in the current fiscal year. The village requested qualified engineering firms submit a statement of qualifications for performing the Phase 1 and Phase 2 work for the project. 3 firms submitted statement of qualifications, and village personnel determined the most qualified firm is Baxter and Woodman of Crystal Lake, Illinois. Baxter and Woodman subsequently submitted a proposal to complete Phase 1 of the project for a fee not to exceed $162,200. The FY19 and FY20 budget contains $260,000 for Phase 1 and 2 of the project. An agreement for Phase 2 will likely be brought to the village board in late 2018, as information gained in Phase 1 clarifies the needed scope and level of effort required for Phase 2. It is recommended the board approve the Phase 1 proposal from Baxter and Woodman for an amount not to exceed $160,200. Okay, I see that we have our engineer and gentleman, I'm assuming representing Baxter and Woodman here.
Yes, they are. So the only one correction here, since I wrote this, that Phase 2 contract will probably happen in the spring of 2019, not late in 2018, as we get a little further into the Phase 1. I guess 2 points I want to make before we turn it over to the Baxter Woodman people. One is, the word here is reconstruction. What we normally do, what we call resurfacing. So this is a much more intense project to basically take it down in the dirt and start over and build the street the way we want it. So that is it's a big deal. It's a big project for me. It's a big project for the village to take on that stretch of Green Bay Road. The other thing is like I said, we'd like to get this federally funded. It's probably a $2 million plus project. I don't know if you get around there. And when you get federal funding, there are requirements. So one of the big things that we were looking for as far as an engineering firm is people who understand that process, people who can guide us through that process and get us as close to the product that we want to do, but yet meeting all the federal guidelines and requirements for getting it funded. The other thing is the STP funding through Lake County is in flux right now. They're changing their whole process, and they have not defined their parameters and their scoring of how they're going to score this in 2020. So that's kind of the biggest wild card for us right now, is we want to make sure we have this project ready for the next call of projects to be successful at getting funding, but they're still defining how they're going to score their funding. So these, Baxter and Woodman has been involved in, John was at the last meeting trying to influence the scoring and giving his 2 cents worth on how this process should shape. So tonight we have John Ambrose is the president, is that your title, of Baxter and Woodman? And Dan Shug is going to manage our project. He's also been guiding us on the Moffett Road project for federal funding. So he's helped us through the process on that project, and we are set to do it on Green Bay Road. So,
Thank you, President and trustees, for giving us this opportunity to discuss the Green Bay Road project. I'm just going to pass it over to Dan Shug. Dan's one of our senior transportation engineers, and he'll go over some of the main parameters of the project.
I don't have a formal presentation for you guys tonight, and to be honest, Jeff did a great job of covering what I was going to talk about. But I will give you a brief overview of the federal process. Like Jeff said, I managed the Moffett Road Phase 1, Phase 2 project that's now moving into Phase 3 construction later, probably sometime in August. The federal process has all sorts of requirements. Anything from studying the environmental aspects to wetlands to taking right-of-way, working with park districts. We've covered all of those things. We will take care of all that in Phase 1. Phase 1 is really the concept stage, though. It does not, we're not producing plans. We are studying the improvement. We are deciding, or we are assisting the village in deciding what the village's what the village wants for this project. What's the vision? Do we want the road wide? Do we want it narrowed? What type of curb do you want? Do we want to preserve the trees? Do we want to add additional trees? Those are the types of things we're looking at in Phase 1, the conceptual items. Phase 2 is when we will actually go in and produce plans and specs ready for bidding, and then Phase 3 is really construction. The Phase 1, we are going to be getting this fall of 2018. We anticipate Phase 2 beginning sometime in spring of 2019. Again, both of these 2 phases we're trying to get wrapped up prior to January 2020. That's when the SDP call for projects will come out. That's when the village can submit for federal funding. Getting these 2 phases done before that means more points. You'll score higher than other municipalities who haven't completed their Phase 1s, haven't completed their Phase 2s. So it will give the village a better chance to get the funding. That's really our goal here. Do you have any questions? Otherwise, I can go in, I can talk all night, or I can quit talking now.
Briefly tell us why this project needs to be done. Just kind of at 10,000 feet, why do we need to do this? I'm not just talking Phase 1 and Phase 2, but I'm talking about the
why it needs to be done?
Yeah. So we have significant drainage problems on Green Bay Road. There's very little storm sewer there as of now. A typical resurfacing where we just take the top layer of asphalt off and put it back on and replace curb in places, that's not going to address drainage. So included in this is a full drainage study and kind of we can put out the storm sewer system we want.
Okay.
That's probably one of the biggest issues. The other one is just the pavement is just going to keep deteriorating. The curbs have sunk. They're not where we want them, level-wise and grade-wise. Okay. And I don't think we're going to get a good product just milling and resurfacing and patching curbs and sidewalks. So this should get us back to basically a brand-new street.
All right, thank you.
There's significant traffic interruption on Green Bay between Park and Hawthorne on, I would guess, not even a 2-year rainfall.
Yeah.
We talk in terms about 5 and 10 and 50.
I've driven through that swimming pool before.
Yeah, there's at least 2 or 3 spots that just puddle during any decent rain. That's, there's an old concrete street under there, and it's been built up with asphalt over that, and that just is not a good way to keep it flowing.
Yeah.
It ends up holding water. All right, any other questions? Well, excuse me, would you please, that's great. Would you mind coming up here? Sure. And then just kind of identify yourself? Thank you. And that's actually for the numerous TV audience that I'm sure we have tonight.
Hi, I'm Susie McMurray. This is my son, Dan McMurray. He lives at 307 West Prospect and Green Bay Road. My question is, will all those houses along there that are flooding all these times, and all the houses that are on the, well, there's east and west are flooding. Will they be able to hook into this storm sewer so that they can drain their yards that are flooding constantly over there?
Yeah, and that is a goal we have going in. You know, the project is to drain the street and to get a storm sewer on certain blocks. I know Dan's problem is in the side yard and it comes into his house. It is kind of an odd situation since Green Bay is the divide of the whole village. It's generally the high point between Lake Michigan and the Skokie as to why we have so many drainage problems right on essentially the top of the hill, but we do. And some of these problems will be solved or be able to be solved. We don't know yet because we haven't gotten that far into the study, but these are the main goals: to drain the street. And then if we can do that in a way that helps some of these side problems, that's the goal.
Well, the logic of that would be if it's coming out of the yards, it's going to go into the street, right? So that's why you would combine these goals, I would think.
There's a lot of homes on each side of Green Bay Road have rear yard problems, and we don't have a storm sewer for them to tie into.
Right.
In some cases, that will work out once we hopefully add some. I can't tell you right now for sure we're gonna have storm sewer through the whole street of Green Bay Road, and some of those rear yards are significantly lower than the street, and there'll be a depth question there too, but that will be figured out in the study.
And part of that is in scope with other studies that are ongoing,
Yes.
correct?
Yeah, with the overall village storm sewer modeling
Right.
project will help us too. This might allow us to run some storm sewer up the side street if we need to drain Green Bay Road, and then we could pick up other problems on those side streets where we don't have storm
That
sewer.
would help a lot. Thank you.
Any other questions from the board? Sir, did you want to speak?
Yes, please.
Sure.
So Mike Coleman, 418 Green Bay Road, the adjoining property there. I would just like to ask the village consider moving on this as quickly as possible. My backyard actually last year was as high as 2.5 feet in some places. This year has been over 18 inches. Having a child who is just learning to walk, it is literally a drowning hazard in my own backyard. So the flooding issues the drainage issues on Green Bay Road have significantly impacted our quality of life, whereas we can't use our backyard for a majority of the spring and summer seasons. To be honest, I'm going to be looking, and this is just advising you guys, I'm going to be looking to move as quickly as possible on remediating my own personal problem. So, whatever I can get authorized to do, next year, I'm going to try to do. So if, that needs to be taken into account in their plans, just keep that in mind. Beyond that, again, just please move quickly on this.
Thank you, sir. Any comments or things from the trustees? Any more comments from Jeff or?
Jeff, would you talk about two things? One, public engagement, and then two, talk about some of the federal standards and how the road fits in today with current standards?
Okay, yeah, and one thing that we're going to do is, what we will do is have a public meeting. Part of their scope is to have a open house style public meeting, which will be required by IDOT. IDOT will tell us exactly when that meeting needs to happen in this process, so we may have an additional meeting or two just as a village to try to get more public input. That is, we're going to have a significant detour. There's going to be disruption to many residents' lives who live in the east and the west terrace, and especially south of the UP Bridge on Green Bay Road. There really is no way to get out of the Wimbledon area without going through Green Bay Road. So we'll have to get input on that. Also, as residents bring their drainage concerns like we've heard tonight, and just what they talked about bringing together a phase one that shows what we want the road to look like. I mean, there are some requirements as far as minimum road width, which is wider than what we have now. There's requirements to provide bicycle lanes or some sort of, I think you said just means for all modes of traffic. So we will need some variations from certain standards to be able to keep the roadway as it is. I think that's our goal going into this project, is to try just to rebuild it in place as it is now and not widen it by 6 feet. not, take out all the trees in the parkway and significantly change the nature of the roadway. It kind of looks like a residential street, and I think we'd like to maintain that in the end. So part of Baxter and Woodman's job is to apply for these variations and allow us to rebuild it the way that we want it rebuilt.
If IDOT were not to allow those variations, how much wider would the road be? You said 6 feet, is it 6 feet? or-
The standard is 30 feet, and it's about 24 feet right now, so it'd be about 6 feet wide.
About 3 feet each side, so you'd lose a lot of the parkway, trees, et cetera.
And it wouldn't necessarily have to be 3 feet each side, however it fit.
Mhm.
The other standard for bikes, I think if we were not to get a variation for bike accommodation, we'd probably take one of the sidewalks, have to make it 8 feet wide on one side of the street, which could impact some trees as well.
The sidewalk 8 feet wide?
And then we call it a bike path,
You call it, okay,
essentially.
understood, thank you.
They won't use that anyway.
Any other questions? Thank you all very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. All righty, we have a first and a second. Roll call, please.
Trustee Grenier?
Aye.
Trustee Lemieux?
Aye.
Trustee Meyer?
Aye.
Trustee Inkman? Aye. Trustee Dewart?
Aye.
Okay, we'll go back to, which number is it?
It's 2, actually, it's number
A.
as well as 15, 8A and 15.
Okay, I'm going to also request from the board that we move, as I see the executive director of the library here, that we can move up that to kind of expedite him. I'm going to take Agenda 8A, which is a request from the Lake Bluff Library to waive building permit fees for the re-roof of the library. On July 18th, the village received the attached letter from Library Director Eric Bailey requesting a waiver of all permit fees associated with the re-roof of the library and History Museum building, as the total cost of construction of this project is estimated to be between $100,000 and $200,000 without a waiver. The permit fees for this project would be between $1,025 and $2,025. Similar requests have been considered on a case-by-case basis for other nonprofit and governmental organizations. Do I have a motion on this?
So moved.
So moved by Mr. Lemieux and a second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Meyer. Any questions regarding this?
One of the questions I'd asked Drew was what the village's out-of-pocket were for inspections, and the answer was nothing, because Mike Croak will do the inspections. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, roll call, please.
Trustee Lemieux?
Aye.
Trustee Meyer?
Aye.
Trustee Inkman? Aye. Trustee Dewart?
Aye.
Trustee Grenier?
Aye.
Okay, and we have item number 15, which is a resolution approving a site plan for the re-roof of the Library and History Museum. Do I have a motion to accept that resolution?
So moved.
So moved by
Second.
Ms. Ankerman and second by Mr. Meyer. Any questions? For that, well, let me read the blurb here. The Lake Bluff Library is planning to re-roof the Library and History Museum building this year. They're considering 4 materials: asphalt shingles, standing seam metal, cedar shake, and artificial cedar shake. Cedar shake is the existing material. Site plan review approval is not required in order to re-roof in the same material. The asphalt shingles being considered are the same ones used on the train station and the village hall. The ABR discussed the materials at their July 10th meeting and voted 5-0 to recommend the village board approve the site plan for the asphalt shingles and the standing seam metal. The ABR voted to recommend against using cedar shake or artificial cedar shake. The recommendation against cedar shake is only advisory, not binding, since site plan review approval is not required to re-roof in the existing material, which is cedar shake. All righty, the library director is in attendance to answer any questions from the board. Did I get a?
So I've got a question, is the advisor, is the ARB or ABR, sorry, their stance on artificial cedar shake, is that binding? So artificial cedar shake is off the table?
As is cedar shake.
Well, that's not the way this reads. but
Right,
okay.
no, the artificial cedar shake, that is binding, so they would not be allowed to do that by
Okay.
this.
So
Whereas
they're-
cedar shake, they're not required to have a site plan review.
That's- I'm sorry.
for
Yes,
because
yes, sorry.
it's new material.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
I
Thank you,
misspoke,
Mike.
that's right.
Thank you, Mike.
Any other questions? Okay, that is a roll call vote.
Trustee Meyer?
Aye.
Trustee Inkerman? Aye. Trustee Dewart?
Aye.
Trustee Grenier?
Aye.
Trustee Lemieux?
Aye.
Okay. All right, I think at this point, we can go back to a semblance of the, unless you have
One
another.
more, one
What
more.
is your other one?
18.
Number 18. Give that one, thank you. All righty. Here we go. Is a resolution approving a professional engineering service agreement with Baxter and Woodman for the sanitary sewer evaluation study. Do I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, so moved by Mr. Lemieux, second by Mr. Meyer. The village sanitary and storm sewer systems connect at a point near the intersection of Moffett Road and East Witchwood Lane. During portions of 2016 and 17, the village had flow monitors installed by its consultant Baxter and Woodman to determine how much sewage is flowing through this area during rain events and if the cross connection can be eliminated without risking additional basement backups. Information discovered during the flow monitoring shows that a reduction in the amount of rainwater entering the sanitary sewer system is required to separate the sewers. The village's FY19 budget includes $100,000 for the completion of a sanitary sewer evaluation study to determine, one, where the rainwater is entering the sanitary sewer system, and two, what actions the village could take to reduce the flows in the sanitary sewers, and three, if such reductions would allow for elimination of the cross connection. Baxter and Woodman has provided the village with a proposal for a lump sum fee of $53,700 to perform the first steps of this process. The remaining budget is anticipated to be used to further investigate issues discovered during the smoke testing and in determining how much rainwater can be eliminated from the sanitary sewer system. The FY20 budget includes $350,000 to implement the recommendations of the sanitary sewer evaluation study. It is recommended that the board approve the proposal from Baxter and Woodman for a lump sum of $53,700. Jeff, did you want to add anything to that, or?
Not really, I mean, that's
Necessary.
the plan, is to.
That's the plan, okay.
Define problems.
Does the board have any questions of Jeff?
So we know that there is cross-contamination based on the flow meters? In other words,
We know there's a potential for it. We know that it rises up about that high. I think in some storms, the storm rises faster, and actually you have storm dumping into the sanitary. And then if you get larger storms, that can get reversed. We haven't found that in one of the storms that we've monitored, because we've, of course, didn't have them in there July 12th of last year.
Yeah.
We had pulled them about 3 weeks prior. But it seems that the way that, with how much rain we get and the jump in the elevations and in the pipes, that's happening.
thank you.
So if sanitary goes into storm, then sanitary sewage goes into the,
Goes into the ravine, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Roll call, please.
Trustee Inkerman? Aye. Trustee Dewart?
Aye.
Trustee Grenier?
Aye.
Trustee Lemieux?
Aye.
Trustee Meyer?
Aye.
Okay, now we can go back to the regular agenda order. Village Finance Report for July 16th through 30th, 2018. Warrant reports. Expenditures of village funds for payment of invoices in the amount of $186,636.77 for July 16th to 31st. Okay, do I have a motion, please?
So moved.
So moved by Mr. Dewart, and a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Meyer. Any questions for the finance director? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Trustee Dewar.
Aye.
Trustee Grenier.
Aye.
Trustee Lemieux.
Aye.
Trustee Meyer.
Aye.
Trustee Inkman. Aye.
Okay, we are now having, for the June 2018 finance report, we will have a report from our director.
So sales tax revenue for May through April of 2018 reached an all-time high of $3,182,854, which is 2.7% greater than May through April of 2017 at $3.12529. Home rule sales tax for May through May of 18 revenue of $966,218 is 0.7% greater than the prior year of $966,218, and the state admin fee accumulated for May through April of 2018 is $19,315. Building permit revenue for May through June of FY 2019 is $81,230, and compared to the $149,330 for May through June of 2018. The significant changes are due to the interior remodeling projects at 71 South Waukegan Road, the Deer Path Medical Building, and current expenditures are consistent with or less than budget.
Do I have a motion to accept this report?
So moved.
Moved by
Second.
Ms. Ankerman and second by Mr. Lemieux. Any questions for the finance director?
Wonderful news. Thank you.
This is the highest sales tax that we have
Yeah,
ever
it's
achieved,
great news.
which I think should be noted.
Yep.
Thank you. Erica.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Roll.
Roll call. Didn't I do the roll call? I'm sorry, roll call, please.
Is it roll call? Okay. Trustee Grenier.
Aye.
Trustee Lemieux.
Aye.
Trustee Meyer.
Aye.
Trustee Inkman. Aye. Trustee Dewar.
Aye.
Okay, village administrators report.
I'd just like to add, it's not listed on the agenda, but it's already been discussed earlier by our wonderful Bill Goodman, but we had the bike race this weekend. The Criterium race was held in, I would say, sketchy weather, but not horrible weather. In fact, it actually turned out to be pretty nice, and that it was cloud cover, and it would sprinkle a little bit, and then it would dry up, sun would pop out, and it stayed cool most of the day, and made for great races. Great turnout by the cyclists. International, Colombia, Germany, Australia, riders from all over participating, and a great day. I would say that the weather did keep some fans away, unfortunately, but I also think that, this is our 7th year and people are learning and they show up for the pro races. And it's very exciting, those races, because traveling at speeds, 35 miles per hour range, it's pretty exciting. Not to mention the on and off sprinkles didn't leave certain corners a little bit slick, and there were several spills. Good news is I don't think there were any formal transports. Somebody did transport themselves with a separated shoulder, but mostly road rashes, and a lot of those riders got back in the race and finished. So it was a great day, and there was a block party to close the evening, and I believe also weather kind of dampened that a little bit, but a great evening, and I would like to compliment all the volunteers that did participate to help make that a special event, and George Russell was the head herder of volunteers for that. I know that was probably the best turnout in terms of course marshals that we've had in a very long time, and so that was great. And many others, Deb Dintrop was a big part, and the race director, Marco Colbert, too, of making that. The good news is the race director, this is really grown from one race on a Friday night, June 1st, 7 years ago here, to a 10-race series that is internationally driven by these cyclists, and it's unbelievable how this event has really taken off, and it's a national. If not, I think this year they were going to find. Last year they almost eclipsed that this would be the biggest series in the nation. So I think they were waiting to find out how the rest of the participation goes. But this is, could be part and actually the birthplace of the biggest series in America when it comes to cycling races. So it's been a great event again, and again, glad for our public safety did a great job, and I know the cyclists love, we have a mobile ER room out there, and I don't think any of the races do it. I mean, we actually have ER physicians staffing our fire bays, which is remarkable, and the cyclists love this race, so.
I just second, village staff did a fabulous job. The police, public works, fire department, unfailingly polite and supportive, and even when the day got long and late and the weather wasn't as cooperative as it could have been, but village staff is always outstanding, but even more so this year, so thank you.
And I'd like to thank Drew for so many years ago
Yeah.
volunteering Lake Bluff to
Yeah.
be a part of this effort and taking the plunge. And what a
thing.
difference maker.
Yep.
Well, that was, well, thank you. But Marco was the big, it was his financial investment, so. But yeah, offering up the town, that, I mean, I think that was part of the, and at the time, there were two bike shops in
You could have
town.
helped us take the plunge.
Well,
So,
it's
thank
been
you.
fun. Yep, thank you.
I have a couple of comments. One to point out that at Carnoustie, the golf course in Scotland, it was sunny and calm on Saturday. So the other thing is we had two, as opposed to here, we switched.
Big swap.
Yeah, it was a swap. I had comments from two Lake Forest residents that they would like to see us publicize this race more heavily in Lake Forest. Because they keep thinking, oh my gosh, that was this weekend, I forgot about it, and we might get more attendance from our friends from the south, so I thought I'd pass that on.
Will do.
Okay. All right, anything else from you?
No, ma'am.
Okay, sir. Village attorney's report.
No report tonight.
Village president's report. I would also like to say, me too, also to what trustee Lemieux said about the outstanding job that all of our employees did to make it a really good event and also to make it a safe event. Unfailing courtesy by everybody at all times, which really does make us proud. And as we kind of we're getting past the midpoint of summer. And just to also remind people that we will not be meeting for the first meeting in August, as people are taking vacations and things of this type. And continue to watch out for kids and things on this summer, and continue Bluffinia, and there are still events will be rolling on. I would like to appoint the village board, which we had discussed previously. Subject to the consent of the Board of Trustees, the village president appoints members to village's various advisory boards and commission. Village President O'Hara recommends the appointment of Emma Johnson, Lake Forest High School incoming senior, to serve on the Sustainability and Community Enhancement Ad Hoc Committee. Emma comes highly recommended to me from her teachers, environmental teachers at Lake Forest High School. I've met with her. She's an extremely articulate young lady, very passionate about becoming involved in her community. And as this is the only committee where we actually have a full-time student in an active role, we're very proud of that, and I know that she will continue to do so. And Emmett Brady, who is leaving after serving 2 years, off to college, and I know that Emma will do a good job. So may I have a motion to approve her appointment? So moved by Mr. Renee. Is that second by Ms. Ankerman?
Second.
Thank you very much. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. All righty, we are now down to number 16 in this kind of patchwork of the agenda tonight. Resolution authorizing the execution of a construction contract with Campanella and Sons Construction of Wadsworth, Illinois, and waiver of competitive bids for the Glen and Sylvan Storm Outfall Repair Project. The FY19 budget includes $25,000 for the repair of the storm sewer outfall into Ravine Park at the intersection of Glen and Sylvan. The existing corrugated metal pipe outfall is significantly deteriorated to the point where water falls through holes in the bottom of the pipe and has washed away soil, creating significant voids under the pipe. It's also been determined that the deteriorated section of pipe extends under Sylvan Road, which is scheduled for resurfacing before the end of July. At the July 9th Village Board meeting, it was reported that the village received 2 quotes to replace the outfall and the portion of pipe extending under Sylvan Road, and the lowest quote was from Campanella and Sons Construction for a lump sum fee of $24,480. The quote exceeds the $20,000 and therefore requires village board approval and a waiver of competitive bids. Due to the impending resurface of Sylvan Road and the desire to complete the replacement of the storm pipe prior to resurfacing, the village agreed to proceed with the project and bring a resolution for approval at the July 23rd Village Board meeting authorizing the ratifying of a contract and competitive bid waiver. The work is expected to be completed prior to the July 23rd meeting, and I'm assuming that that has been completed. Is that right, Jeff?
It has not been completed. With the rain they had the end of last week, Campanella they're still working on something else. They are now scheduled for Wednesday. The good news is they are coordinating that with Peter Baker. The big issue is we don't want Baker to be delayed.
Right, so
we're
it will be
working that out
coordinated.
together, and Peter Baker is okay with them doing that work on Wednesday, so we're
Okay.
not causing a delay.
Okay. All righty. The village engineer recommends the village board waive the competitive building requirements bidding requirements in accordance with section 4.5 of the Village of Lakeville's purchasing policies and procedural manual, and award a construction contract to Campanella and Sons Construction in the amount of $24,480. Do I have a motion, please?
So moved.
And that is so moved by Mr. Dewar. And a second by Mr. Lemieux. Any questions from the trustees?
The waiver of competitive bids requires a supermajority vote, so.
That's good to know. Okay, this is a roll call vote, please.
Trustee Lemieux?
Aye.
Trustee Meyer?
Aye.
Trustee Inkman? Aye. Trustee Dewar?
Aye.
Trustee Grenier?
Aye.
Okay, I think we got our supermajority. Okay. We are now going to agenda item 18, which is a resolution approving a professional
Oh,
service.
we did that one.
We did that.
Oh, yeah, we did, that was in the
19.
consent, that was 19. I'm sorry.
No.
19.
Benjamin has.
You're right, you're reading the correct item. It's
I know I'm reading
a
the correct.
typo in the top right-hand corner.
I know, because it
My
does say-
apologies.
Thank you, because it does say 18 on here.
It does, my apologies.
Golly, okay, all right. Agenda item 19. Resolution approving a professional service agreement with Benjamin Historic Certification LLC. This is for an architectural survey of certain areas in the village. Do I have a motion, please?
So moved.
So moved by Ms. Ankerman, and a second, by Mr. Meyer. The FY 2019-20 biennial budget includes $35,000 to complete the survey of the village's historic architecture. The village has previously commissioned 3 such studies, including a summary and architectural survey in 1998, which was on the east side of the village, a summary and inventory of the southeast survey areas in 2003, and summary and historic resource survey estate areas of Lake Bluff 2008. The scope of this anticipated final phase of surveying is expansive. A principal focus will be on documenting the development of the terraces, which are seen as emblematic of the development of post-war mid-century housing styles in the village. Other areas anticipated for study include east of Sheridan, north of North Avenue, remainder of the east side, the Dwyer Settlement, which is west of Green Bay Road, north of Rockland Road, Arbor Drive, Tangley Oaks, Armours Woods, Campbell Court, Sanctuary, Signey Court, Belforet, Thorn Valley, Bath and Tennis, Wimbledon Court, Shore Acres Drive. Susan Benjamin, principal of Benjamin Historic Certifications, has been involved in every prior surveying effort of the village and possesses the necessary skills and expertise to complete the project. Her firm has proposed to complete this work for $34,515 over the next 9 months. Staff recommends approval of the agreement. I did a motion, yeah, I did. Okay, any questions regarding this?
So I've struggled with this. I struggled with the vote in 2003 for a much less amount. I've struggled with this. I guess the question is, does this does this have value for taxpayers? I guess in talking to Drew today, what he said that, I guess, made me a little less upset about this was that I guess now when a property hits 50 years old, if there are changes to it, it automatically goes through HPC, and the point of this would be to identify significant structures so that everything over 50 years doesn't get dragged through the process, just things that are identified. Is that
Well,
correct?
if it's 50 years old and it's going to be demolished or significant
Right.
demolition review, so that's when that review would take place. And just to be clear about that, that Historic Preservation Commission wants to do this survey to have a complete survey of the community. And it was that other advisory body that the village board, the village president has established, the residential building committee, that had talked about the idea of the value of a survey like this could be that instrument of information that would allow the HPC to be more surgical in their aspects of their work and single out specific properties and have the complete survey done so as to not miss any structure and or landscape that they would want to landmark and have the complete data set, if you will. But again, that's something I'm not certain the Historic Preservation Commission would actually support. But again, that's an issue that's come up.
Well, then, I would ask that we clarify that, because for me, unless that happens, this doesn't have enough value for me to vote for. So I would say I'd want Historic Preservation to say, we're going to unclutter our process, and by virtue of this survey, then we'll subject those identified properties to the process, and those that are not significant won't be subjected to the process. I don't mean to hold this hostage, but absent that, I don't see enough value in doing this.
I also was concerned about the practical application, and so, I took what Drew said as being, giving enough information that our boards and commissions can proceed with the knowledge that they need. So if that is value that helps them in their process, then I see that as being worth it.
So I would propose, I mean, we can vote on it and it may pass, but I would propose tabling this and getting the HPC to let us know if they're going to unclutter their process with this data.
Glenn Cole's the village's, my assistant, he's the liaison to the HPC. They had a conversation about that. Glenn, can you maybe offer some more insight into the HPC's desire to complete this project?
Certainly. Since the appointment of Chair Steve Kraus here earlier this year, the HPC has really been trying to refocus, trying to create a new plan, a path forward, a way to sort of revitalize their group and really chart a new course, try to make that more relevant as conversations about the character of our community, trying to preserve it, become more relevant. A few different reasons the HPC is interested in this. Excuse me. Interested in this. The first is this idea that now that the terraces are starting to become 50 years old, that many of those lots are larger in nature. The HPC feels that this area will increasingly become an area of interest for developers, an area of interest for teardowns. And so there's a desire both to kind of beat that to the punch in terms of documenting the history there before we start to go down the slope, if you would, but also to have, as I think was put fairly well, the information at hand to evaluate those requests, those proposals, to be able to really know what is significant, what needs to be preserved, and things that will inevitably change out of that process. Another discussion I heard as well, and this wasn't in the public meeting so much as in individual conversations, but right now if you look at our historic surveys, they really focused on the east side and the southeast side and the estates. And so about half of our town we really know nothing about from a residential history perspective. Really there's very little surveying at all west of Sheridan Road except on Green Bay for the estates. And so when we think about the value of that group and the value of trying to make something for, to use your words, all taxpayers or everyone in the village, it's part of what this group wants to convey in their planning is that historic preservation is more than just the east side, more than just the southeast side. It's something that needs to be relevant for everyone in the village.
Well, thank you. That clarifies it. I guess though, you know, what is the value of knowing the history of individual homes and the terrace all by itself? I mean, I understand there's an academic interest, but what is the value to the taxpayer?
Certainly. I think a lot of that, not that particular discussion, not one done extensively at the HPC. I think I would say many of the HPC's processes focus on individual structures. So if an individual structure is to be removed, if an individual structure that would be landmarked or up for consideration for a landmark, the HPC just needs information to benefit that. So will each and every house benefit each and every taxpayer? No, probably not. But if you look at it in the aggregate, you know, if you're, you know, the owner of a historic house, now you know. If you're interested in landmark preservation, now you know. You have access to a tax freeze, to tax credits, to protection. And so I think there's important value there.
Okay, well, I'll weigh in. I think there is value. I think one of the things is that when we began to restructure the HPC a little bit, I had asked them to zero in on education. We talk about preservation and we talk about the character of the community. And what does that mean? We have all, you know, we have people that have lived here for a long time, but we also have other people coming in. And what do they see and how do we do? How do we educate them that sometimes, instead of just thinking of a tear down, is there something that you could do? Our ranch homes have value, okay? That is definitely a post-war whole phenomena. The terraces have value. The first terrace started, the North Terrace, right after World War II, and then you had the terraces that go in the late 50s and early 60s. They are a phenomena that is unique, not just to Lake Bluff, but to the whole development of America after World War II. And I think that we need to recognize that. Do they have the historic age and maybe architectural features that some places on the east side have? Maybe not. But they signify a certain period of time and who we are. And I think that that needs to happen. I know that what they're planning to do, example in Tangley Oaks, they're going to zero in on not every house. They're going to zero in on the models and how that reflects all of that. But I think we need a history. I think people want to know about their homes. And I hate to tell you, you know, in my wearing other hats in town, I'm often asked, well, you know, what goes on? What does my house have? Does it have a history? What was here before you put that house up? We're also talking about the Dwyer settlement, which goes back to 1837, which is historic in that area there too. So I guess I do see a value that we have hallmarked and benchmarked and made an actual record of the edifices in our community.
What have we done, like with the 2000, I know there's one in, what, 98 and 2003. What have we done with that data?
Okay, that, and the data that I'm understanding, because I actually sat in on one of the preview meetings that they did because I was interested to see what was going to happen.
Right.
Okay, in the original one, there are actually thick binders, and they are all located right now at the History Museum. But what the History Museum has done is every time there's any information about a house that's on those streets, and it is not the entire east side of town. Right. It stops at North. Yeah. Okay, it's added to this. So what started out as simple, you know, pretty cut and dry thing, architectural things, many of these have abstracts. They have pictures that have been donated by family members and stuff for some of these houses and stuff. So it becomes part not just of the architectural history, but of the social history of the town. What the new proposal is and Glenn can tell me, you know, can do this more than I can explain that better. There will be digitized. Is that correct?
That's correct.
That's right.
So,
you want to explain that?
Sure, and I'll see if I can give you a dog and pony show while I talk a bit here. So one of the HPC's big interests is really, and Steve Krause, I confess, could do a better job of conveying the vision here for me. He's been working very hard with his group to develop it. But part of it is really to inform people purchasing in the Lake Bluff, people looking to renovate their homes or even to construct new in Lake Bluff about that social, that cultural history. So something we've been talking about is sort of bringing the prior surveys into a digitized form and trying to collect the records associated with them, and then looking for this new survey. We've really designed, as you can see in the letter of agreement, we've really designed this to be sort of a digital first way of putting this together. So in the past, you'd have individual survey forms that'd be in a binder. Here, the forms will still be produced on the back, but really they're collecting it into a form that can go immediately into a map, can immediately be in a publicly digestible product. So to give you an example, if I can figure out which way is the right side up, always a problem.
Looks like a stormwater file.
Or is that kind of abstract art? I'm not sure.
Looks like a deck.
Just a wallpaper. So this is not terribly user-friendly. This is a mock-up we made while trying to make sure we were covering everything as part of this next survey go-around. So, you know, there's still some abbreviations, things like that. But each green dot represents something that predecessors in the administration department took from the original paper surveys and digitized into a spreadsheet form. So you can click on any one of these. You can see, at least right now, you can see the address. Let's not use that example. Let's use a different one. So these are the significance ratings assigned by the surveyors at that time. Rating S for significant. This is the surveyor's evaluation of if a home was individually valuable enough to be considered for the National Register. It goes through, you know, a description of the architect where it's known. This one doesn't have a whole lot of information associated with it. Describes the windows, the window types, other things they're able to glean from the survey. The survey forms still have some of the background documentation in them. This obviously, again, isn't ready for public consumption, but something like the city of Evanston, for example, has this much more developed out with what they've done in their Lakeshore Historic District. I think that's part of the vision here is to bring, is to try to produce that type of product and to be able to build it over time with the help of volunteers from the History Museum, some of our citizen historians.
Is there some thought that that might help with home sales? Did I understand you say, like, you know, I'm thinking about a house, I get to see the history of it, or?
Steve Krause would describe it to you as a dossier, if you would. The idea being, you know, if we want Lake Bluff purchasers to really, I suppose you could say, value the history of the home they're in and value the history of the community, one way we can help that is by giving them the history of the house and by really trying to create, if you would, a sense of identity around our neighborhoods. You know, down, for example, in the city, you can go 2 blocks and you cross into a different neighborhood with a different identity. And so why can't the same thing happen here in Lake Bluff when you have, for example, the Dwyer settlement, when you have, you know, out on Sunrise, you know, some of the original wide streets from the promenade to the tabernacle and these very historic elements. I'd also say too, you know, it wasn't a big topic in our conversation, but there are academic studies out there that say, you know, if you establish historic districts, if you do these things, property values tend to rise as well. I think Woodstock has a well-developed study of that as well.
And it honors the neighborhoods. You know, sometimes I think people feel like some of our neighborhoods have gotten short shrift. We tend to zero in on the east side. But our other neighborhoods have significant need for, or have been significant in the growth of this community. To know about them, to be able to do it. And I have seen the copy of the Evanston one, which I think is great because a picture of the house goes up, it tells you exactly what was there. And what it does is it gives a sense of identity. And it also gives it a sense of idea of our neighborhoods and that we do value our entire community, not just a few streets that may have camp meeting homes.
I think there's value to completing this as a comprehensive study. I think as we look and see what's happened on the east side with the changing streetscape, as we've had some tear downs, we've lost the perspective perhaps of what had gone before, and being able to maintain that and document that. The reality is the terraces are probably ripe for redevelopment, and tear downs and things like that as well, sooner or later. And I think that being able to have a sense of that, as we said, from a social and historic standpoint is probably valuable, and it probably makes sense for us to go ahead and complete this and wrap up a comprehensive program.
I just had a quick question about how it would impact a homeowner if all of a sudden their house was deemed like a historic, property, and then they wanted to make some changes to it. I mean, we were talking about the terraces, would it impact them financially, or how does that impact if all of a sudden I want to add on some space to my home? Those homes are a little smaller, so there are families moving in there that want to maybe add on and have a little more space since the lots are so big, not necessarily demolish the house. Would they be restricted then in how they can add on or what they can do with their property?
Certainly. So a two-part answer for you. The first would be, as a direct result of this survey, nothing changes. So it would all be processes looked at by the Historic Preservation Commission, approved, adopted by this board. You might recall we actually did one at the last meeting for 673 Maple Avenue. So if someone were to seek, landmark designation, there's an upside and a downside. The downside is you need to wait a little bit. You need to come to the Historic Preservation, present your plans. For just alterations, the maximum delay, the longest that can take is an extra 35 days, so essentially one extra meeting. But the upside to that is you do get a pretty significant discount on your building permit. So I believe it's 25%. So our building permit fee is about 3% of value, so that's a few $1,000s back in your pocket. If you're looking at renovations, in addition, there's a state property tax freeze. So your taxes may still go up, but the assessed value of your property can be held constant for another 8 years. So if you put so much money into the property and so on. So there's some pretty tangible benefits. That's another part of the story we'd really like to tell about what the Historic Preservation Commission does and some of the benefits to caring about it as a property owner.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
It just sounds like the main focus is the education piece to convince people to look harder at what decisions they make with their homes. I know one of the risks that we have in this community is as property values go up, people will want to maximize the house. So we'll see a lot of homes going to maximize the square footage, height, and we get homogeneous communities. So I would appreciate education at least, but of course we have to be realistic. We can't force people to do things and so that really is, is there any other tool we have other than educating people?
Having paid attention to this for the last 30-some years, I think education is the only way to go. You can't force people, nor do you really want to, but you do want to educate them so that they may begin to see some value. Okay, anybody else? Okay, I did the first and second. All righty, so this is a roll call, please.
Trustee Meyer?
Aye.
Trustee Inkeman?
Aye.
Trustee Dewart?
Aye.
Trustee Grenier?
Aye.
Trustee Lemieux?
Aye.
Thank you. All righty.
All for the discussion.
Thank you for, it's a discussion because it really makes us look at the value of things. Okay, so we now have item number 21. I think that's where we're at. An ordinance amending Title I of the Municipal Code regarding a comprehensive fee schedule and approving an amendment to a professional service agreement with Passport Parking, Inc. Do I have a motion, please?
So moved.
So moved by Mr. Grenier, and a second, please.
Second.
Second by Mr. Lemieux. At its June 11th regular meeting, the Village Board of Trustees approved a professional service agreement with Passport Parking, Inc., and fee amendments necessary to implement mobile parking payments at the village-paid commuter parking lot. Pursuant to the agreement, the cost of Passport services are borne by the parking user as an additional fee per transaction. Other Chicago area clients of Passport under the same cooperative purchasing agreement add additional fees in this per transaction fee. The village's pricing, including any additional per transaction fee, was not discussed or negotiated during the village's preliminary negotiations with Passport. Only the amount to be retained by Passport for use of their software platform. However, Passport now asserts that the terms of the contract preclude the village from charging the fees previously approved by the board, which was 25 cents to Passport, 25 cents to the village. The village does not concur with this interpretation of the agreement. However, during further negotiations, Passport's best offer to provide the services is to set the fee at 37 cents, 25 cents to Passport, and 12 cents to the village. While this would reduce the incremental revenue to the village, this fee structure still results in no net cost to the village to provide this option to parking users. The attached table that you have illustrates the fee comparison among cash payments, credit card payments, and mobile parking payments. Board approval is required to amend the agreement and the fees charged to parking users. Is any questions here from the board regarding this?
So one of the questions I'd asked Drew was, did we draft some legal agreement that, we didn't understand or sign something? And I guess, Drew, basically you said we were looking at a model from another community, and unbeknownst to us, Passport had changed their policy about that. So it wasn't a case of us negotiating something that we didn't understand or didn't have common understanding about.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah. Simply put.
The other thing that you talked about was Passport is the 800-pound gorilla that Lake Forest has a competitor, and I guess is less satisfied or moving away from them. So
Going to
this
Passport.
is the only game in town.
It's not the only game in town, but it seems to be the game most people are playing.
Yes, okay. Thank you.
And so it's, again, yeah, we have very little leverage. It's a short version, and not ideal, but the original goal of the board was try to, let's not make this offering cost us money. I think we stay in that world. It's not as ideal as we thought it was going to be. And again, they've done this deal that we were seeking with another community, and they've changed how they want to do that now. So this is the best deal they will offer us.
The best you can say is there's no extra money in it for them either.
Any other questions? Roll call, please.
Trustee Ankman? Aye. Trustee Dewar?
Aye.
Trustee Grenier?
Aye.
Trustee Lemieux?
Aye.
Trustee Meyer?
Aye.
Okay. Item 22, an ordinance amending Title I of the Municipal Code regarding the comprehensive fee schedule. We would like waiver of second reading and approval of the ordinance. Okay, do I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you. And a second?
Second.
Okay, Mr. Grenier, and the first was Mr. Lemieux.
Lemieux.
In April, Governor Rauner signed into law Senate Bill 1451, the Small Wireless Facilities Deployment Act, making it Public Act 100-0585. The act, which became effective on June 1st, establishes numerous specific standards that apply to the installation and operation of small wireless facilities by wireless services providers such as AT&T, Sprint, and T-Mobile, and by installers of small wireless facilities, which are called SWFs. The act significantly, and I will repeat that, the act significantly restricts the ability of municipalities to regulate these small wireless facilities. The act applies principally to the installation of small wireless facilities on poles in public rights-of-way. The rights-of-way include roadways, highways, streets, public sidewalks, alleys, and easements dedicated for similar uses. Examples of the new standard include municipalities have only a very limited ability to require a small wireless facility to be located on a particular pole or category of poles, except when the new pole is being installed. Small wireless facility installed on a pole can extend 45 feet above the ground and can extend up to 10 feet above the pole on which it is attached, even if that is higher than 45 feet. Small wireless facilities must be allowed on a municipality's pole, except that there's not enough room on the pole. Municipalities must approve an application unless it does not meet a specific requirement of the Act or generally applicable local code. A wireless provider may apply for up to 25 single wireless facilities in a single application. The fees for applications and an annual fee are set by the Act and are smaller than what many municipalities have been charging. Importantly, the Act provides the municipalities must establish certain local fees within 60 days after the June 1st effective date of the Act. However, the Act provides the following restrictions on municipal fees and rates. The amount of application fees must be within these limitations. Up to $650 for one small wireless facility or on existing utility pole or wireless support structure, and up to $350 per small wireless facility if the application is to calculate more than one small wireless facility, and $1,000 for each small wireless facility in an application that includes new utility poles. By July 31st, the village must make fee schedule available by ordinance or adopted written fee schedule. Rates and fees must be non-discriminatory regardless of service provided. The village may charge a recurring annual rate for small wireless facilities on a village-owned utility pole equal to $200 or actual direct reasonable cost related to the wireless provider's use of space of the authority utility pole. There is no limit for poles outside of the, what is the ROW again?
Right-of-way.
Right-of-way, thank you. To comply with the Act, the village board should consider adopting the ordinance to establish a schedule of fees for small wireless facilities installations and for the annual rate for small wireless facilities to be located on village-owned poles. Due to the requirement that the village enact these fees prior to July 31st, a waiver of second reading is requested.
The benefits of campaign financing, huh?
Isn't it though? This
is a crime.
It is.
This is a crime.
It is a crime.
And I don't know if any of you have seen what these things look like.
But they're like small refrigerators that you see in dorm rooms.
They're even worse than that. They're like Volkswagens on poles.
And some of them are streamlined, others look like a real total kludge job.
Anyway.
Right, so we virtually, as a municipality, have very little control of this, and this could be proliferated throughout our community.
When you think about the right-of-ways that are controlled by the village, think about
Right.
state right-of-way.
Right, and they could just go all over. We have absolutely no control. So the aesthetics that we so pride ourselves on in this community, you know, we talk about the beautiful trees and we talk about this, and now the potential for this. But what it does is, it infringes on our sovereignty as a community to make decisions for ourselves on what is appropriate within our community. And we're seeing this more and more with the state coming in and doing that. And also interfering. Used to be if you were home rule, you had a little bit more ability to control things in the community. That is also eroding from the state, along with the facts that they are eating away at our sales tax and unfunded mandates, you know, and also, you know, the fact that our local distributive tax, which is part of the taxes that we get back from income tax. By the way, they hold the new income tax higher rates. We don't see any of that. That goes to the state totally. So that's now being infringed upon. It's very much of a concern, and it's what's going on. And that's coming on the backs of municipalities like ours, like others on the North Shore, that we have AAA ratings, and we've worked really hard to save that, to have reserves to protect our village. And they say, well, you've got a reserve, so you don't need any money. We can take more away. I'm sorry, I'm just totally frustrated with Springfield.
So what we can do is charge fees, so the question I'd ask Drew is, are we charging the cellular companies the maximum fees that can be assessed?
Yes.
And
The
that's
other thing I
about
would
all we
say
can
is,
do.
the other thing I would say is there are, the statute does not completely preempt the field, so Drew and I will talk about regulations that we can propose in the village where we haven't been preempted, that other municipalities have tried to thread a needle through.
Yeah, well, along those lines, I'd certainly like to see us have the ability to prevent this kind of thing. I'm showing you guys a picture that's in, looks like it's Aurora and Naperville perhaps. And if you look through the internet, you can see alternatives that are a lot more aesthetic where, well, I don't know if I have an example here, but where there's shields and cowlings and things that, that will at least make it look a little better. So I hope we can take a ordinance to the maximum level of power that we can assert consistent with this state statute, maybe even inconsistent with it if we have to fight.
Okay, thank you. All righty.
Motion and a second for first reading.
I'm sorry, what?
You have a motion and a second for first reading.
I do, I know. So we need to have a roll call for that.
Voice.
A voice for first reading, and we will need to have a, do I have a first and a second for second reading? I don't have that yet. So do I have a waiver for second reading?
Do you want to do voice on the first reading?
Yeah, voice vote. Okay, thank you. I'm just
One-
so annoyed.
One quick question, if we
Go ahead.
don't approve this, we go on double secret probation or something, or what happens to us?
It's just to protect in case we get an application.
Right, prior, because that could happen any
August.
day,
Yeah,
right.
great.
As soon as this thing takes,
Thank
we
you.
could
That's
we
right.
could do that.
When does
we
it take
have
effect, the
no-
31st?
Yep.
Yeah, and we need to protect ourselves as
Okay.
much as we can.
So then we're waiving second reading as well to be able to
Yes.
effectuate
Yes.
that, good. All right, well, so
Otherwise, it's
moved
got to be
several
done by the
times.
end of the month.
Okay, well,
Voice vote,
good.
voice vote.
Voice vote, voice vote,
first reading?
please, on the
First reading?
first reading. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, do I have a motion to waive second
So
reading?
moved.
Thank you.
And second.
Mr. Lemieux and Mr. Meyer, and roll call, please.
Roll call. Trustee Dewar.
Aye.
Trustee Grenier.
Aye.
Trustee Lemieux.
Aye.
Been here too long.
Trustee Meyer.
Aye.
Trustee Ankerman.
Aye.
Okay, thank you all. Trustees report, do we have anything for this edification of the group tonight? No? All righty, then I'm going to ask to go into executive session, so we consider the minutes of the July 9th, 2018 executive session meeting, and to discuss an appointment. Personnel. So do I have a motion, please?
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, and Mr. Grenier, and seconded by
Mr. Dewar.
Mr. Dewar.
Roll call.
Roll call, please.
Trustee Grenier.
Aye.
Trustee Lemieux.
Aye.
Trustee Meyer.
Aye.
Trustee Ankerman.
Aye.
Trustee Dewar.
Aye.
Okay. Sure, more to come from Springfield.